We live in a world that's just constantly screaming for our attention. And we've all been taught that power, well, it belongs to the loudest person in the room, right? That real influence is all about having the quickest comeback, always getting the last word. Today, we're going to take that whole idea apart. We're going to explore a force that's so powerful, it works in the spaces between the words. It's a weapon that's invisible, it's silent, and it is devastatingly effective.
So let's get right into this paradox. The single most aggressive move you can make in a high-stakes conversation is to make no move at all, to just say nothing. Now, this isn't being passive. This is about creating a conversational black hole, a void that literally forces the other person to get pulled in, to start desperately filling that emptiness that you just created. And that, right there, is how the entire power dynamic gets turned on its head.
We call this principle conversational gravity, and I want you to think of it like a law of physics, but for how we talk to each other. You know how a massive object warps space-time? Well, a powerful silence warps the conversation around it. It creates this irresistible pull that compels the other person to reveal way more than they ever wanted to, all because the human mind just can't stand a vacuum. See, silence isn't an absence of something, it's an active strategic pressure.
And it is so crucial that you reframe this in your mind. You're not just being quiet, you're deploying a tool. You're methodically, carefully setting a psychological snare. You're making them chase clarity like a drowning person chases air. And by the time they think they've found it, they've already given you everything you wanted. Okay, so this brings us to the core vulnerability that this whole strategy exploits, something called the clarity deficit. It's that moment of pure panic when the normal back and forth of a conversation just breaks and our brain kind of malfunctions. Let's look at how this actually shows up in the real world. I mean, really think about it. You're in that job interview, or maybe you're in a salary negotiation, a tense conversation with someone you care about, and the other person just stops talking, and the silence is just hanging there in the air. What do you feel? It's not just awkward, is it? It's this deep, primal, almost biological urge to fix it, to just say something, anything, to close that gap. That feeling, that's the snare tightening around you. And this right here is the critical moment. This is when you start leaking power. That discomfort, it makes you talk, it makes you explain and justify and soften your position. You start volunteering information you had no intention of sharing. You're basically negotiating against yourself, all because you couldn't stand a few seconds of quiet. These examples, they're universal. We have all been there. The boss who asks, "So why is this project late?" and then just stares. The negotiator who hears your final offer and responds with absolute stillness. And in that void, your brain just starts racing, creating this overwhelming itch to fix the moment. And what do? You over-explain, you backtrack, and you lose your ground. In a matter of seconds, that silence causes a massive status shift. It transforms you from a player into a pleader. The player, they hold their ground. They control the frame. But the pleader fills the void, begs for a response, and basically starts soliciting for their own dignity. All because the other person did absolutely nothing. So how does this work as a deliberate strategy? I mean, this isn't random. It's a forensic 4-phase cycle that's designed purely for information extraction. So let's break down the mechanics of what is essentially a psychological interrogation. So the whole process unfolds in 4 very distinct phases. It all starts with the strategic stop, which then leads to insecurity incubation. This, in turn, triggers the critical explanatory surge, and finally, everything gets locked into place with the vacuum reward. Let's break each one down. The first 2 phases, this is all about setting the trap. Phase 1, the strategic stop, is where you intentionally just kill the conversational momentum. You make your point, or you ask your question, and then you stop. You don't fidget, you don't look away, you just hold that space. And that immediately triggers phase 2, insecurity incubation. Because in that gap you've created, the other person's mind just starts to spiral. And believe me, their internal monologue goes absolutely wild. They're thinking, are they mad? Did I say the wrong thing? Am I about to lose this deal? They start projecting all of their own anxieties, their own insecurities directly into your silence. You've basically become a blank canvas for their worst case scenarios, and they're the one doing all the work. All of this internal pressure inevitably leads to phase 3,
the explanatory surge. This is the moment the dam breaks. They can't handle the static in their own head anymore, so they talk. And they don't just talk, they gush. They over-explain, they reveal their bottom lines, they expose all their weaknesses. This is the moment their silence becomes your interrogation, and they're the ones doing all the confessing. Finally, after they've given you everything, you move to the fourth and final phase, the vacuum reward. You just offer a small piece of feedback, a simple nod, maybe an I see, or that's helpful. The relief they feel from this is immense. It's like coming up for air after being held underwater. And that powerful emotional release conditions them to avoid the pain of your silence in the future, which solidifies your control over the entire interaction.
So, we've seen the how, but why? Why is this technique so brutally effective? Why are our brains so vulnerable to this? Well, the answer lies in a few really deep-seated psychological triggers that strategic silence just hijacks.
This entire system is powered by a kind of psychological engine, and it runs on 4 key principles. It exploits the social contract of reciprocity. It leverages something called the authority of the observer. It weaponizes our own projection bias, and it creates a scarcity of the signal. Let's see how these all work together.
So, first, it exploits what you could call a neural glitch. From the moment we're born, we are wired for conversational reciprocity. It's basically a game of catch. I speak, you speak. I throw the ball, you catch it, and you throw it back. But when you strategically go silent, you're refusing to catch the ball. This just breaks the social contract, and the other person's brain, it literally doesn't know what to do. It glitches.
And this glitch gets amplified by the authority of the observer. Think about it, the person in a group who speaks the least is often seen as the most powerful one, the one with some kind of secret knowledge. Your silence makes you a blank slate, and that triggers something called projection bias. The other person can't read you, so what do? They project their own fears, their own anxieties, even their guilt, right onto you. They just assume you know something they don't, which grants you instant status.
Okay, so we've exposed the weapon, we've looked at its mechanics. Now, how do you defend against it? And how can you maybe use it ethically? We're moving now from theory to application, mastering the art of conversational stillness.
All right, here are 3 tactical counter moves. First, and this is the most important, hold the line. When they go silent, your only job is to do nothing. Match their silence. Count to 10 in your head if you have to. The first person to speak concedes status. Second, name the game. If it's getting really uncomfortable, just call it out, but neutrally. Something like, you seem to be giving that some thought. This puts the pressure right back on them. And third, audit your softeners. Get rid of phrases like, does that make sense? Or ending sentences with, those things signal that you're seeking their approval.
But listen, this tool isn't just for defense or for attack. It can actually be used ethically, especially if you're in a leadership position. The goal just shifts. You aren't using silence to crush an opponent, you're using it to create a space for the best ideas to come to the surface.
And here's exactly how you can apply this ethically. The next time you're in a meeting, after you ask a really big question, force yourself to wait at least 15 seconds. It's going to feel excruciating, I promise. But in that space, the deep thinkers, the ones who don't normally speak up, they'll finally find the room they need. Your silence becomes the canvas. You're inviting them to paint their genius on it.
You know, the core lesson in all of this is that true conversational power isn't about what you say, it's about what you don't say. And it really all boils down to this. Stop trying to explain yourself. Get comfortable with the void. Start letting the silence do the heavy lifting for you.
The loudest person in the room is so often the weakest, and the quietest, well, they hold the keys. The question isn't whether you use silence, you already do. The real question is whether you use it with intention. So, what will your silence say next?